these things that we've talked about, if you put them into your onboarding protocol, if you really just have a good foot forward type of approach, you're not going to see the same level of issues. And when they do happen, you'll have a process to get them resolved.
If you've been doing anything with Facebook ads lately, you've probably been having a deluge of ad accounts and just getting banned, right? Business managers getting banned, ad accounts getting banned, and for seemingly no reason.
Yeah.
Campaigns that have been running for long periods of time suddenly being declared, they're no longer following Facebook's policies. And it's just happening like it's spreading like wildfire. And so there's a lot of questions as to why this is happening. Um, I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of people at Facebook who've given us some insights into what at least is happening inside of Facebook. The funny part is, even when you talk to people inside of Facebook, they don't even fully know because it's, above their pay grade kind of a deal. So, especially if you're doing anything in the United States, we're coming up on election season. Facebook doesn't want to be caught with their pants down regarding election integrity again. So, they are being hyper vigilant on the on ad accounts and campaigns. In the process of being hyper vigilant in order to make sure that Facebook is checking all the boxes, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, a lot of companies and advertisers are getting caught in the crossfire of that, to where the bots that they've developed are so hypersensitive that they just, and their default response is kill it rather than, oh, let's investigate and see what's going on. It's just, nope, get rid of it. We don't want it on the platform because Facebook wants to basically be able to say, look, we did everything we could to prevent stuff from happening. So that's kind of what's going on right now in terms of the Facebook world. Like I said, can't confirm any of it. This is just talking to some people inside of Facebook what they're saying is going on. But obviously, you're never going to hear anything from Mark Zuckerberg confirming or denying any of that stuff.
Right.
So, but we're feeling the brunt of the consequences of those actions right now.
Right. I think the good news is it may not be a 100% solution. However, we've got a couple of things that we've learned and that we're implementing now that can really help prevent a lot of things. And I think the big thing is what's the proper prevention, because that's where you're going to stop most of the bleeding. That's number one.
Hmm.
And then if you do get caught in a sticky situation, just make sure to deliberately go through the steps that we're going to talk about in this video. So the first thing, and by the way, in the description of this video below, I'll have actual links that you can access and use, because step number one of this prevention process, that's where we're at right now, is what are we doing the very first thing when we onboard a new agency client?
So the first thing that you want to do is actually get your identity confirmed, right? So if you go to facebook.com/ID,
Mhm.
you can preemptively upload your driver's license or state ID or passport or whatever you use for your identification to Facebook, which I know you may not be too comfortable giving Facebook that, but that's if you want to
Mm.
advertise on Facebook, that's the game. Um, you upload your ID preemptively on that website, because what that's going to do is it's basically going to move your profile into a bucket of confirmed people, right? If you're in an unconfirmed bucket, you have a much higher likelihood of the bot hunting you down and declaring you to be a bad actor on Facebook and locking your account out. So if you can preemptively get into the bucket of this person's confirmed, it's a real person, then you're going to avoid a lot of headaches right out of the gate. Talking to the team at Facebook, one of the things that they specifically recommended was to actually, you'll have two options when you're confirming your ID. One of them is just a basic authentication option. The other one is you plan on doing advertising for social, political, or economic reasons, right? Or for economic topics. And those are the hot button topics. We don't need to get into any of that, but if you confirm your identity utilizing that higher level, a couple things are going to happen. One, Facebook is going to send you to your physical address, your actual personal address, a code. It's going to take about 3 to 5 days for it to show up to your house. Once you get your code, you'll punch that into Facebook. And then Facebook is going to do an identity verification where they're basically going to pull your credit. They're not going to It's not going to actually damage your credit or anything like that. They're just going to look at your credit report. They're going to ask you questions like, "Oh, did you live on this street? Oh, have you ever had this as your employer?" Right? Questions that you should be the only one to know. They're going to ask 3 or 4 of those questions. And as long as you answer them correctly, you'll then be verified. The benefit about going with that higher tier where you're saying, even if you're going to do absolutely nothing with politics or with economics or employment or whatever, right, you're not going to even touch any of that stuff. But if you're cleared to that level, it now gives you a lot more breathing room in terms of what the bot is going to flag you for, right? So if anything that feels like you're kind of skirting the line, violating policies, the bot isn't actually going to pay attention to you. It's going to pay attention to the people who haven't gotten that higher level of confirmation. So if you're planning on doing advertising on Facebook, I would personally, it takes longer and you can still advertise while you're doing this process. I mean, run a risk of the bot flagging you between the confirmation period and the actual launching of the ads. But if you go that higher process, you're going to be in a lot better position to advertise without being watched over by the bots, which right now, like I said, their sensitivity levels turned up to 11. So you're
Can I stop you real
dancing a
quick?
fine line. Yep.
Can I stop you real quick? So you've got 2 verification processes. Okay, one is you take a picture, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. You take a picture, you send it in, you get confirmed. It's pretty quick,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then 2, and you actually have the piece of paper that they sent you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean, I already used the code, so it won't work. So I can show it to you. But yes, you get a piece of
yeah,
paper from Facebook. There you go. Um,
yeah. So that's the second form of verification, and that would you now you are doing that form of verification when we onboard clients, actual like the people that we run ads for. We're not doing that verification for them. Right.
correct.
So would your advice be to, if you are running an agency, if you are the owner of the business manager, the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of going through that second verification process, do you think?
I would say definitely for an agency owner and for your agency's business manager, you should definitely go through that second level of verification. For clients, that one's a tough one because people have all kinds of varying trust levels with Facebook to turn around.
Mm,
And I mean, it's big enough ask to say, hey, take a picture of your ID and send it into Facebook. It's quite another to say, hey, you're going to send a letter to your address. You're going to have to verify personal information, like all this stuff. So just kind of fill it out with your client. I mean, if you can, I would do everybody that the higher level, right? You're
yeah.
going to have far less likelihood of crap coming up. But I understand from a client perspective and keeping clients happy that you may just do the lower level just to get verified. Just realizing
Preemptively.
that
Yeah.
preemptively, yeah, just realizing that you still may get, I mean, and even with the higher level, you can still get flagged. It's just the degrees of probability of that
Yeah.
happening, right?
Yeah.
You have a much higher probability without doing this at all, less probability if you do the first level, and even lower probability if you do the second level.
And that second type of confirmation is available at the same link.
Correct. Yeah, it'll
Okay.
ask you when you go there. It'll be two options that you can choose. One's just
Okay.
an authentication option, and the other one is to actually advertise for political purposes, and that's the higher level one.
Okay, so let's then pivot over to image upload types. I think number one, and what's funny is we had this issue with our own agency like 2 or 3 weeks ago where we were sending in IDs and they were getting rejected. So talk about um, the underlying problem and then the solution for the types of images that need to be uploaded for ID verification.
So the ID verification, just like you would expect, is done by a computer. It's not actually done by a person. So you need to make sure that your ID is extremely clear. You're going to take a picture of both the front and the back of the ID if you're doing the second level verification for Facebook. You only really want your ID in the picture, right? A little bit of edge of whatever you're taking the picture on. So if you put it on your desk, it's a little bit of the desk around the edges is fine, but you really want to hone in just on the picture to make it as clear as possible so the computer can scan it and basically pull out the information that it needs to see if this is actually a legitimate ID. If you're doing that second level verification, it's also extremely important. I'm pretty sure at this point every driver's license and ID has this. I could be wrong, but there should be a barcode on the back of your driver's license. That barcode needs to be very clear because that barcode's actually the secret sauce to the computer actually being able to then pull your credit report and everything like that. So that barcode needs to be clear so that way it can just take
By the
that and
way,
then
we
go
don't
out
know if
and
they're
pull that.
pulling your credit. We don't know if they're pulling your credit report, but just they who knows? Do they have access to the credit bureau data? Yeah. Okay. Um, so so good camera, good contrast on the image, no
Yep.
fuzzy, like
No
no
fuzzy,
fuzzy
no
images.
bright spots. So it's better to take it in a not a dark, not, don't turn their lights off, but a dim room, because most cameras on your phone will actually perform better for these type of pictures with less ambient light. So you just want to make sure you're in more of a dim room, so that way the contrast can be bumped up on your ID and stuff. Now, obviously, that changes, right? The where I my state, my driver's license is white, right? So it's white except for the picture, and then the little part of the top where it says the state. Some states, I don't know, they maybe you have a full on cover color driver's license, so you may need to adjust to your specific ID type. But if you're doing anything where it's got a high contrast, dim the lights.
Okay. This is all proactive activity. One other thing that I believe falls in the proactive part of the conversation is um, we call it account seasoning, and basically, if you've got a client, whether you start a new ad account or they've never had an ad account before, and so you're starting a new ad account for them, we have a protocol that we call account seasoning. Talk to me about account seasoning.
Yeah, so account seasoning is basically we're trying to let Facebook know that we're planning on being a good actor and that we're good for advertising on the platform. So if you just jump straight in, you start a new ad account, you jump in, you launch two or three campaigns, you've got a bunch of ad sets, a bunch of ads going. Most likely, your ad account's just going to get blocked right out of the gate because you don't have a relationship with Facebook. And the reason why they're blocking you, even though it'll say, "Oh, you violated our policies" or whatever, the real reason why they're blocking you is you haven't advertised with them long enough to know that you're good for the money, right? That's
Mhm.
really what it's about. You're good for the money. So you want to prove to Facebook that your credit card on file is actually going to go through, and they need to
Yes.
have consistent billing through your account first. So,
Yeah.
oh,
And let me stop there real quick. Just have really clear communication with your customers that when you're onboarding them, say, this payment method, this credit card, it's clean, it's good, available balance, that's all good. Because one of the things we don't want to have happen is we don't want to ding the credit card and then have the payment method fail, because that will just put us into a whole world of issues, correct?
correct. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
you're on Facebook short list at that point, which you don't want to be on anybody's short list. Um, So now, one of the easiest ways to prove to Facebook that you're going to be a good actor, that you're good for the money, all that kind of stuff, is boosted posts. That's the easiest way. So take a couple of posts that are well performing that follow Facebook's policy guidelines, because a lot of times organic posts, you say things differently than you would in an advertisement and stuff. So make sure you're picking out posts that you know won't break actual Facebook policies, um, and then boost those, right? Throw 30, $40 towards them, do it a couple of times. That shows, because well, the benefit about boosted posts is they're charged right away. So it shows Facebook card on file can go through, they're actively running ads, they're following our policies, people are responding, right? Because especially too with boosted posts, you can usually get likes, comments, clicks, the type of stuff Facebook likes on their stuff. So it's showing, okay, this person is going to be a good advertiser. Once you're through the boosted post phase, then you want to launch one campaign, right? So your whatever your top of funnel campaign is, launch that first campaign. Only have a handful of ads or ad sets. Don't go crazy. Don't build out a gigantic, complicated campaign. Keep it super simple. And then once you get past about a month of doing this kind of slow roll, at that point you're pretty much ready to go to advertise on Facebook. One of the easiest ways to know if your account is, I guess, Facebook seasoned is if you go into billing, Facebook allows you to set your payment threshold. So this is you've accumulated a certain amount of ad spend. Now Facebook's actually going to hit your card to charge you. By default, brand new accounts, they usually start off with like a $2 threshold because Facebook wants to know that you're actually going to be good for the money. If Facebook lets you bump your payment threshold to over $1,000, you're in clear with Facebook, right? They've seen enough action on you that they trust you enough. If you're below $1,000, keep it slow. Keep a slow roll until that payment threshold can get above the $1,000 mark, and then you can basically say, all right, now we can just run the campaigns like normal.
Okay. Ads disapproval protocol. So
So the when you have an ad disapproved, an ad account disapproved, a business manager disapproved, you can always appeal, right? You get one appeal, right? So keep that in mind. You get one chance, and if that appeal fails, their decision is final. And there is, with very rare exceptions, a way to get out of that final decision. And the only rare exceptions are you get ridiculously lucky to get on the phone with somebody with Facebook and they happen to be high enough up that they can reverse that decision, right? Very, very rare. It's not something that you want to try to get all the time. So, in order to prevent that and to get your one shot at of appeal, you want to make sure that you're actually being reviewed by a person. So, here's something else that most people don't know is that in that appeal process, if you say, for instance, I don't know which policy was violated, or I think my account was hacked, because you get three options usually when you do an appeals. I don't know what policy was violated. I think my account was hacked or other. If you use those first two options, oftentimes all it does is go right back to the bot. The bot just goes back and rechecks it, which is why it'll then come back. Oh, of course, your thing is disabled permanently. This is our final decision. The third option, other, will go to a human being to be read. Okay. So that will actually allow your account to be viewed by a person as opposed to just going back into the computer queue. When you are giving your appeal, the important format that you want to follow, and you only got a little bit of space. I mean, I think you only get like 200 or 300 characters to actually like make your appeal. But the important thing is, this was the last campaign that we ran. This was our intention behind that campaign. We don't believe it violated any policies. If it has, we will remove the campaign and make the changes necessary, right? You basically want to say, tell Facebook, this is what we intended it to do. And if we're wrong to do that, we want to make the changes, right? So then they will release your account so you can then go in and make those changes. That'll then get reviewed by a person. They'll be able to see, okay, this is a human being. They'll look at your campaign, they'll look at your intentions. Oh, these match up, and then go from there, right? Um,
The big
that
thing here is just the big thing here, like the really, because I think what you were saying, how to fill out the form, I think that's common sense. I don't know. Seems common sense.
Well,
But
I
the
don't know.
big
There's been times where me personally, I've gotten so frustrated with Facebook that I just go into the other form of like, this is totally fine just to release my account, right? Because you're just frustrated.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
important to
don't do
just
that.
keep
But the
that
big thing
format.
here, the big thing here is to choose the other
Yes.
category. Choose the other category. That way, you know you're going to a person to review this.
Yes, exactly. Make sure
You
you
don't want to
pick
deal with
other.
that stinking bot. All right. I actually had meant that question is fine. That was going to be my last question, but that means we missed one, which is this. If you have an ad, not an ad account, but an ad that gets disapproved, a campaign that gets disapproved, what's the protocol? Just
Uh,
in terms of just good hygiene for your account.
don't leave it. Okay. Whatever you do, don't leave it. And don't request a review right out of the gate either. Look at your ad and see, okay, so let's say it comes down. So for our agency, we do a lot in the medical space. So a thing that we get flagged for more often than not when we do have disapproved ads is personal attributes, right? So on Facebook, when you're doing medical advertising, you can't call out, you know, do you have thyroid issues, right? You can't say that phrase, right? So the first thing you want to do is when they come back with a disapproved ad, really go through your ad with a fine tooth comb. Yes, you may have a bias that, of course, this is totally fine. Just go through it super, super carefully. Is there anything you can do to tweak it just the tiniest little bit that you can then shoot it right back through and it gets approved? Because again, you get one shot with a review, which means if they do come back and say, no, this did not follow policies, then that ad is permanently disabled. And then it goes as basically a mark against your ad account, right? And if you've ever had your ad account disabled for having too many disapproved ads, this is what people are doing. They're just, oh, I'm just going to send in for a review and send in for a review. Every time you go for a review and it fails, or every time you leave disapproved ads on your ad account, that counts against you for that purpose. So, take all your bias out and say, okay, I'm going to go through this. Is there something I can tweak? Send it through, get that ad approved. If after that it still comes back disapproved, you've done every tweak you could think of, it still comes back disapproved, then go ahead and shoot for a review. Maybe it'll get approved that way. If it then comes back disapproved from there, delete it. Get it off of your account so that way it shows Facebook
But
you aren't willing to keep pushing that message.
but make sure that you request the review. You don't just try and change, try and change, try and change. It's not working. I'm just going to delete it.
Yeah.
No, try and change, try and change, try and change. Request the review. If after that fails at cycle, then delete it.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, I think those were the broad strokes, not even broad strokes. Those were the exact steps that we wanted to cover in this video. Now, I know even the tone of this video seems, well, everybody's frustrated. So, I think that is reflected in the way we're talking about, what we're talking about here. But I would say we have started implementing these things in our own agency, and we've spoken with people at Facebook. If you guys start doing these things that we've talked about, if you put them into your onboarding protocol, if you really just have a good foot forward type of approach, you're not going to see the same level of issues. And when they do happen, you'll have a process to get them resolved. So this is not like doom and gloom. And uh, every other platform is going to have a lot of issues coming into election. I mean, into the political scene. So if you don't deal with it on Facebook, you're going to deal with it somewhere else. So it's fine. Follow these steps. You will be okay. I'm going to include down in the description section of this video a couple of resources to help you create, the protocols that we've talked about. So the links will be there. But I also have a guide in there that will kind of give you a couple of best practices in terms of running lead generation campaigns for local businesses. So that will be in the description section. And thanks for watching. Jacob, thanks for the info, buddy. Thanks for being a nerd. Appreciate you.
No problem.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next video.